Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Set to return on the undercard of Adam Azim versus Steve Claggett. $1 Million baby Francesca Hennessy will be returning to action for what is a WBC silver title in the bantamweight division. Opposite the ring, Italy's own Persio, Aurora Persio, who sports a professional record of 8 wins with 1 loss and no draws, 3 recorded knockouts, having never been knocked out in 9 professional bouts, a similar number of bouts to Francesca Hennessy, who sports an unblemished record of 8 wins with no losses and no draws, with 1 recorded knockout. Both fighters are only 21 years old in the early days of their boxing careers. This fight is a step in the direction of a Shernika Johnson fight, as Shernika Johnson currently holds every alphabet title at the weight. Thus, any step in the direction of an alphabet title is a step in the direction of Shernika Johnson. Now, do I expect Francesca Hennessy to face Shernika in the near future? I actually don't. Even if she wins this fight with Aurora, Shernika is promoted by MVP, whereas Francesca is still promoted by Ben Shalom and Boxer, one of the few fighters that Ben Shalom has left. The fight she's about to have is the co-main event to the main event, Adam Azim versus Steve Claggett. I almost forgot that Adam Azim existed, being honest with you. Boxer really isn't what they used to be. From the time they leave Sky Sports to migrate over to the BBC. You mean from the time that Sky gave them the boot? Since it was Sky Sports' decision to not renew with Boxer, I'm sure that Boxer would have wanted them to. Going from Sky Sports over to the BBC wasn't a conscious decision so much as an act of survival, and that is where Francesca's next fight is going to be taking place in what will be her second fight this calendar year. The first was the Ellie Boutel fight back there in January. It was the last time she fought. Whereas Aurora, she last saw action in June of last year, where she fought 2 times. Once in May, again in June, then she sat out the rest of the year. In that way, it would have been approximately 11 months from Aurora's last fight to her next one, so she may have amassed significant ring rust in between that time, whereas Francesca is going to be a bit fresher, a bit sharper. Better on the night, amassing 2 very impressive wins over a former champion in Fabiana Baticki in November of last year, then an unbeaten fighter in Ellie Boutel in January of this one. The resume is coming along for young Francesca Hennessy, the young daughter of famed promoter Mick Hennessy.
Hennessy.
Boxing is a family business for the Hennessy's.
Hennessy.
Seems a good, even fight, a good opponent for Francesca Hennessy as she continues to develop, though, as stated, even with a win over Aurora, if Francesca does win, that does not mean she's ready for the likes of Shernika Johnson. And I do not expect Boxer to truck off one of the few fighters they have left over to MVP for a Shernika Johnson fight, if that's what it takes. Her fighting for some lesser version of a WBC title is tantamount to a decorative item. Curtains, somebody's living room, culottes, icing on cupcakes. They're not going to use that WBC silver title as a segue to fight for the full one, given who they'd have to go through.
Or should they?
Not very many, if any, of Boxer's current fighters are able to get out there more than just a few times a year, and even fewer have any visibility. I mean, where's Karis Artingstall? The move over to the BBC was at least supposed to herald what is tantamount to a terrestrial network, which theoretically should have resulted in more visibility for Boxer's fighters, but it's been the opposite. We don't know when Lauren Price is going to box again. It feels like it took forever for them to get Adam Azim back out there. Where's Karis Artingstall? What the hell happened to her? Francesca Hennessy fighting 2 times in a calendar year under the Boxer banner seems more and more of an oddity when you think about it. There are only a few fighters they can afford to get out there that often, given their current circumstances. And down the line, she's going to have to make a decision. For her career to grow and cross over into the next stratosphere, she may need to go to Matchroom, she may need to go to MVP if they're still signing female fighters, as they've already signed so many already.
They've got a full plate.
For now, she's set to return to action at the very end of this month, opposite the ring, Aurora Persio, and we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches.
Yeah, I'm getting some new scans here in a couple of days of the jaw to get an update on the healing process. We'll see what my doctors say. I think I'll be able to get a more accurate like time frame, or can I even fight again? That is definitely in the realm and possibilities of things. It does like feel a lot better as weeks go by and time goes by, but I definitely need to get cleared first to be able to spar. But I'm, sort of staying in shape. Just I'm always, in the gym pretty much regardless. So just staying in shape and enjoying, some mitt work.
I'll be honest that when I heard Jake Paul say that he may never box again as a result of the injuries he sustained to his jaw in the Anthony Joshua fight, I thought to myself, is a broken jaw really a career-ending injury? Because if it were, Oscar Valdez would have never fought after the Scott Quigg fight, where he got his jaw broke. Jaio Pataya would have never fought after the Mayra Spiritus fight, the first one, where he got his jaw broken. What about Bam Rodriguez? I remember he got his jaw broke too. A good number of fighters. Enough to where I don't ever remember a broken jaw being a career-ending injury. Now, an eye injury, that I've heard of. Fighters like Abner Mares, for example, who had to retire due to an eye injury and gambling potential blindness should the fighter decide to continue. Sugar Ray Leonard's 3-year hiatus from the sport, I believe that was also following an eye injury. He had to take time off. I mean, up until the point that he decided to come back, he was officially retired. And what about double gold medalist Nicola Adams? Following an eye injury, she decided to hang the gloves up. She decided to call it a career early. And that was following an eye injury, but a broken jaw. As stated, I've never known a broken jaw to be referred to as a career-ending injury. So is Jake Paul really retiring as a result of that injury or something else? Is it that did Anthony put the fear of God in this guy? Up until the point you get punched in the face by a full-blown heavyweight, it's all fun in the sun. It's all tits and tan lines until you're in there with a former champion and you get a taste of what real power feels like. Not what you encountered with a Ben Askren or a Nate Diaz or a Mike Perry, a Tommy Fury. You get a taste of real punching power, heavyweight power, and then you realize boxing ain't no joke. Boxing ain't no game. You keep doing this. There is every possibility that you get injured just like this again. I mean, we don't know yet that Jake Paul is really going to hang the gloves up, but on the premise that he does, I don't really think it's because of his injury, because of his broken jaw. I would think it's because Anthony put the fear of God in this kid. He just doesn't want to get hit like that again. All the money that he's already made, there's no actual need for him to keep fighting, and when you look around, there are only so many circus fights left for Jake Paul to make a big wad of cash in the process while jeopardizing his health.
He doesn't want to do that anymore.
He already clanked the mountaintop with what was the Mike Tyson fight that brought in the most robust numbers of any Jake Paul fight. And I said it then that it doesn't get bigger than Mike Tyson.
It doesn't get better.
The only place to go is down after that, because that is a very hard act to follow, and you're gonna have to actually risk something moving forward following the Tyson fight to make people get up and pay attention. He almost got lucky with Gervonta Davis, but we all know what happened there, so he had to swap him out. Find somebody good, find somebody with a name, and find him on short notice. Which he did. Anthony Joshua, who was willing to oblige him, and the event did turn out to be a success. The metrics were good. Anthony is an international superstar after all.
The money was good.
They both got to make a lot of money, but for Jake, it may not make sense anymore to keep fighting. Not if this is what you're gambling, not if these are the kind of injuries that await you. The more you try to get out there and sell yourself as a boxer, sell boxing matches, in the absence of circus fights, if you now have to fight in real ones.
Fuck that shit.
So now he could be retiring, and I want you guys to understand me when I say this, that he could be retiring not because he can't keep fighting, not because he got his jaw broken. A lot of fighters have gotten their jaws broken, so that can't be the reason.
And they kept fighting.
Forget about a fucking broken jaw. Both Miguel Berchelt and former champion Luis Lopez got brain bleeds, and they kept fighting.
I'd call that more of a career-ending injury than a broken jaw.
So to me, it just sounds like it's not a question of being incapacitated and not being able to fight so much as not wanting to after getting hit the way that he got hit by Anthony. And he's never been hit like that before. Not in sparring, not in an actual fight.
I really think that put the fear of God in him. And I only think the fight lasted as long as it did is because Anthony wasn't taking him serious. I feel like Anthony took it easy on him, just went through the motions for a couple of rounds, let it go a few, put on a show for the audience, and then as soon as he wanted to hit this guy, he did.
As soon as he wanted to put him down, and that was against a fighter who I think was going easy on him. Everybody's not going to do that. The longer that Jake Paul fights, the more people are going to expect him to keep fighting serious fighters with serious power, like Anthony.
I don't really think he wants to do that.
You're not at liberty to repackage and recycle fights like the Tommy Fury fight, a Tommy Fury rematch, since there's no demand for one.
Could you get Netflix to pay for that? I'm not sure.
Though I feel like you would have to, since if you tried to bill it as a pay-per-view, it doesn't have the same mystique that it used to, the same appeal, and people aren't buying pay-per-views like they used to. So that's a tough sell. Jake may be running out of options, safe ones.
Him potentially retiring, though, it's not because he can't keep fighting. I believe it's because at this point, he just doesn't really want to, though. What becomes of MVP if Jake Paul is no longer the anchor for their shows?
His potential retirement would herald the potential retirement of not one, but two of their flagship fighters in Jake Paul and Amanda Serrano. If you no longer have them to serve as the anchor for MVP shows, is there enough there to just do the shows on their own?
I absolutely love what they've done in the sport. I love their stable of fighters, but the reality is, most of those women are not big draws. Alicia Baumgartner just fought at the Infosys Theater, but she didn't sell it out. House is approximately 5,000, but it was not sold out to capacity, and she's one of the more well-known fighters that they have.
Can they really stay afloat just doing fights for their stable of fighters? Is that enough, or do they still need Jake and Amanda to serve as the anchor for their shows?
Kind of feels like they do.
Recently striking a deal with ESPN in the United States and Sky Sports in the UK, what, if anything, in terms of a budget, are they getting from those respective platforms? Because I've heard this and that about the structure of that deal.
At least one of them.
Now, up until this point, they've had a pretty good working relationship with Netflix, but of course, Netflix only wants the biggest of the big fights, the biggest of the big events. You can't rely on them to do shows on a regular basis. For that, you would have to rely on ESPN, you would have to rely on Sky, but how much money, if any, are they providing you?
It is also MVP at the helm of the promotion for the upcoming Gina Carano versus Ronda Rousey MMA fight.
That's on Netflix, and we'll see what they end up doing with that, what kind of metrics that yields, and how many more MMA fights is MVP gonna do.
And if Jake Paul really does decide to retire.
Now, Francis Ngannou is fighting on the undercard of Carano versus Rousey, and he's expressed an interest to play Dancing Bear with Jake Paul, box him in a boxing match. Since the most money that Francis Ngannou has ever made as a fighter was as a boxer,
Not a cage fighter.
so he wants to keep boxing, and he has since expressed an interest in boxing Jake Paul. Coming off that loss to Anthony Joshua, who would serve as a common opponent between them, he knocked out Francis and he knocked out Jake.
Do they end up fighting each other? That's at least one fight they can do.
But is that a fight that Netflix would be interested in picking up? And is Jake Paul even still interested in fighting and trying to establish himself as a professional fighter? Because in a short while, he's made a lot of money. More money than most professional boxers are ever going to see. It's not like he has to.
He doesn't have to keep fighting to make ends meet. The real question is, does he want to? And if he retires, I think there's your answer, because I've never known a broken jaw to be a career-ending injury. If you decide not to fight, it's not because you can't. It's because you don't want to.
The fact that like I'm in the same like talking pattern or in the same realm as like someone like Usyk, who's a legend, you know, it's just incredible. You know, I wouldn't be fighting if I didn't think I was the best in the world. I don't think you should. So I think I'm the best in the world, and I want to prove that to everybody else. And what a person to prove it against besides Usyk, you know, the renowned pound for pound guy. So I think that would be an amazing opportunity to just experience and to really solidify just who I am as a fighter, because you need a guy to be the guy. You know, if there's no one around, it's really hard for someone to say, oh, this guy was one of the best ever. You know, but if you get someone like Usyk in the ring and you're able to share that and beat out someone like that, then I really do think that then that's when the Hall of Fame things happen, and that's when the huge accomplishments and like are able to be achieved. So the fact that he's still here and I'm in contention for something like that is a dream.
I find Richard Torres a very refreshing young American fighter, which is saying a lot because American fighters really ain't what they used to be, but this is one of the ones that I like.
He's not an egomaniac. He's not a narcissist. He's got a really good air about him and a good attitude. He's well-spoken, fun to watch, seems amiable, amicable, if that's the right word.
And ambitious. I don't begrudge his ambition to face the likes of Alexander Usyk, even if I don't expect that fight to happen. Usyk doesn't have but 2 or 3 fights left in him, and I don't expect not even one of those fights to be against Richard Torres. But I could see Richard Torres becoming a world champion. I could see him doing that.
Best described as a close quarters fighter, a pressure fighter, who in many ways has to be a pressure fighter because he's on the smaller end of the spectrum as far as heavyweights go. He doesn't have the height or the length to box and punch and box from the outside. He instead barrels forward to crash the pocket and box on the inside. He's got the Frankie Sanchez fight coming up on the undercard of Usyk versus Verhoeven, and I actually expect Richie to win that fight. I expect him to mow down Frankie Sanchez.
Frankie is a mover.
Like Guido Vianello was a mover, and Richard Torres was able to get to him. I think the Guido Vianello fight was a good rehearsal for this fight that he's about to have with Frankie Sanchez, who I expect him to beat. Though you'd have to table any talk about Richie moving on from that to fight the likes of an Alexander Usyk. That's just not realistic. What is maybe Richard Torres winning an alphabet title once Usyk is gone and the belts are all redistributed.
What is realistic is Richard Torres representing the next line of champions after the old line is gone. You're talking about Richard Torres. You're talking about Tira Moana. You're talking about Moses Itelma,
who's being heralded as the next big thing in the heavyweight division, and so far so good. Flying a bit lower on the radar is Richard Torres,
who I think has a future, a bright one. He could, because he's got something that most other heavyweights don't have. He's got foot speed, he's got hand speed, and power, and suddenness, which can go a long way in the land of the lumbering lummoxes, the giants who are very big and very strong, albeit very slow.
Due to his smaller stature, Richard Torres may be limited to pressure fighting in most every fight, but most fighters at heavyweight are limited, so that's not saying much. There's a lot of people I think this kid can beat.
I like Richard Torres. I think he's going to do well. I think he's going to beat Frankie Sanchez. I think at some point he's going to go on to become a world champion, and he may be.
He may become a major player in the heavyweight division. Good luck to him.